This video will serve as an introduction to the coding matrix query within NVivo. You can find it by going to the query ribbon and clicking on matrix coding. This query enables you to cross-tabulate quantitatively your coding, and this can be done by attributes, it can be done by cases, it can be done by other codes. So essentially this query helps you find any overlap and count where those overlaps occur. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of this so you can get a feel for what this query looks like. So first of all, we need to set the rows of our query up. So if I go in and select some items here, I'm going to go into nodes and I'm just going to select 4 themes. So they're going to appear as the rows of this query. So I'm going to add them to my list. It's really important that you remember to do the add to list option, otherwise they won't appear here and the query will malfunction. Next up, I need to decide what's going to appear within my columns. So I'm going to go to select items here, and this time I'm going to go into my cases, open that up, go into my people, and I'm just going to select a handful of participants just to get you give you a feel for what this looks like. So once again, they're added to the list and they're in the columns entry. Now if I run this query, what it's going to do, it's going to generate a table with my rows and my columns in it, and I'm going to get values for those overlaps. So here I can see Betty on one occasion expressed a mixed view as coded by the researcher, or Maria presented one negative thing. This is based on the coding here, so this isn't NVivo deciding what's mixed, negative, neutral, positive. Those are just some of the themes that I've chosen to bring in for this example. As part of this, I can click on View, and you'll see there's this little node matrix option here that enables you to bring in shading. So if I cell shade for blue to white, you'll see the higher the number, the darker the blue. And it just helps you spot trends or themes potentially. So we can see nobody stated anything neutral, and there's quite a lot of negative here. That row's almost fully shaded in. Under here you can rag rate it with green, yellow, red, or red, yellow, green. Just different coding references, but more importantly you can see there's a number of different ways you can change how those figures are represented. So if I change to coding presence, for example, it's a binary yes no. They either mention it or they don't. The number of times are completely discounted from there. If I go back up here, I can do it as a row percentage. So as a row percentage, it's what percentage by area coded falls in each of these. So I can see under mixed here, looking right across, you get the percentages, and of course as a row it's going to add up to 100%. So out of all of the mixed views, 96% of them came from Daniel, 3.17% came from Betty. Up here I've got the option of doing a column percentage as well, so I can see out of Betty's comments 100% of them were mixed. If I look at Daniel, however, 50% were mixed, 40% were negative, just under 10% were positive. So different ways of us representing that. If it's audio or video, we can look at the duration coded. If it's textual, we can look at the words coded. So there's lots of different ways of representing this data. Just because NVivo can do that, it doesn't mean it's appropriate for your project. So if you are being fully qualitative, here you will stray into quantifying things, but this is actually a very acceptable approach for many projects. It just depends on what you're trying to do within your research. If I go back to my query and go to last run query, you'll see, just like the other queries, I can tick to add this to my project, give it a name so it will appear within my query. So if I call this example, just click OK, you'll notice that under my queries in navigation view, examples there, I can double click on this and bring those results up at any point. Now that's not a particularly useful example. That was just so you got a feel for how that query worked. So you saw that the participants and the themes, where they overlapped, the number came in. If I create another matrix query this time, and for my rows I'm going to once again bring in some themes. So if I go into nodes, and I'm going to just bring in a couple of the things related, let's go for 4 actually, 4 themes related to the natural environment, and add them to my list. This time for the columns, instead of bringing in individuals, I'm actually going to bring in an attribute of an individual. So hopefully this will make sense in a second. So if I go to select, and this time I go down to my case classifications, you'll see I can start to bring in things related to my participants. For this to work, you must have attributes associated with the cases that you're looking at. So here, if I bring in gender, for example, and click OK, and then run this, see, I've got to add it to the list, run the query, and it's going to show me how many times those themes have come up by gender. So I can see to the left here I've got female participants, to the right I have male, and those are the themes here. Exactly as before, under view I've got the options to change how these are coloured or coded. So I can see that the most popular theme out of all of these is water quality, and that was mentioned more times by the males than the females. So there's lots of things we can do with this query. Just as we can with other ones, it's also possible to export this, so you can save it in Excel, and you can access it later or bring it into your own document. You'll notice you can also transpose, so it switches my columns and my rows around so I can get it in a different view. It's not just a table view, but down the side you'll see it will also chart this for you. So I've got a 3-dimensional chart here that's representing my data. I can also right click and export that as an image. If I want to store these results in NVivo, instead of storing the query and saving the results instead, you'll see right click again, store query results, and these are just stored in your results section. So I'm just going to call this example, and just to show you where that is and how I can access that later, if I go to my queries down here in navigation view, you'll notice that not only is there a query folder, but there's a results folder, and they can be saved down here. So there's some examples of other saved queries within here as well, or other results that have been saved under there. With the matrix code, you can also choose to save them under your nodes, and they save under your node matrices. So if you wanted to save them there instead, all you need to do, just as before, right click, store query results, and instead of save them in your results, you can save them in your node matrices. So there's a couple of different places that you can store them and access them later. If we do go to nodes and then node matrices, you'll see there's a couple more examples here. So this one shows water quality attitudes by the different communities, and there's another one up here that talks about issues with fishing industry decline, and that's by whether the participants are a commercial or a recreational fisher or not. So these are very, very useful queries, particularly for surveys or particularly for demographics. Really useful ways for you to analyse your results. And even if you are qualitative and you're not going to use these as an output in your project, they may contribute to your thinking on it. The only thing you do need to be aware of, because you're quantifying these results, those numbers can be misleading. So here I can see that commercial fishing, false. There's 49 people talking about the decline here. It could be because I interviewed more people who were not commercial fishers than I interviewed people who were commercial fishers. So if you were breaking things down by managers versus employees, and you interviewed 2 managers, 10 employees, it's quite likely that you're going to find higher numbers for the employees, just because as a quantity of them there are more. So that's just something you do need to bear in mind when you're using this particular query.